I had to fight against the system, against the neglect, against the disregard. They didn't want me to know the truth, but I found out. And now, I need to tell this story to the world. Because no one talks about what happens when you trust your family to a hospital and they just disappear with your child. This is the true story of how I almost lost my daughter to a system that treats children like numbers. I fought. I screamed. I ran. And I won't stop until more mothers know this can happen. Watch this video until the end. If you are a mother, father, or know someone with children, this story needs to be heard. Please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with as many people as you can. Like the video to help spread this story. Subscribe to the channel for more real stories like this. It was an ordinary night, or at least it should have been. Alice, my 5-year-old daughter, had been running a high fever for 2 days. I had tried everything: home remedies, compresses, a fever-reducing medication that the pediatrician had prescribed. But nothing worked. Her fever seemed to rise and rise. And then, at 3 a.m, when I saw her lips turning purple, her body breaking out in a cold sweat, and her breathing coming in short pants, I knew I couldn't wait any longer. I picked Alice up and ran to the nearest hospital, the San Jorge Municipal Hospital. It was an old building with poorly lit hallways and the smell of bleach mixed with mold. I arrived at the emergency room almost out of breath, holding her against my chest while screaming for help. The receptionists, visibly tired, took a long time to see me. One of them, without even looking up from her computer, asked me for Alice's SUS card and ID. I was shaking, my hands sweating, as I explained that she was having trouble breathing and needed immediate care. Alice moaned softly, her eyes half open, her body limp. A nurse glanced at her, got up from her chair reluctantly and said, "Let's fill out the form, ma'am. Wait a bit. We're overcrowded." Those words kept echoing in my head. Wait a minute. How could I wait when my daughter seemed to be fainting in my arms? I screamed again. I begged, until a young doctor appeared, still with his lab coat wrinkled and unshaven, and asked me to go into triage. Inside, they measured Alice's saturation. 82%. I saw the number on the monitor and my heart sank. The nurse exchanged a look with the doctor, who tensed. "We need to put her on oxygen now," he said. But when he turned to get the equipment, the mask was missing. He searched the room for it, searching for it, until he said, "We'll have to do it in the hallway. We're going to move her to the observation room." They put Alice on a stretcher and rushed her into the pediatric ward hallway, but the oximeters were all busy. I screamed for help, but the nursing staff were overwhelmed, running around, and no one seemed to have time to listen. That's when a woman appeared, hair tied up in a bun, stained white coat, tired look. "I'm the nurse in charge. Give me her file." She took the file from my hand without even looking at Alice, scribbled something quickly and asked, "Have you taken Diperone at home? Any allergies?" I said no, that I had only given her the recommended medicine, but she just grumbled, "Okay, wait in the waiting room. We'll call you when the space is free." I refused to leave. I stood there, holding Alice, feeling her getting colder and colder. That's when someone took her stretcher without telling me. A young nurse with her cell phone in her pocket, speaking softly into her earpiece, said, "Let's take her for an exam." I tried to follow her, but she held my arm firmly. "Mom, you have to wait here." I screamed, tried to run, but 2 other people stopped me. "Calm down, Mom, calm down. She needs to do the tests, don't worry." But how could I be calm? They took her away, disappeared through a frosted glass door, and I was left there, alone, feeling time slip away like sand. 10 minutes, 20, 30, an hour. I asked everyone who passed by, "Where's my daughter? Where's my daughter?" Nobody knew. Nobody answered me. And that's when I realized something was wrong. Very wrong. I ran to the door where they had taken Alice, but it was locked. I knocked, screamed, and pounded on the door with my bare hands until my skin cracked. A receptionist looked at me with disdain and said, "Mom, please sit down. You can't go in there." I felt like a crazy person, but I couldn't stop. I knew deep down that my daughter was gone. She had disappeared before my eyes. The hours passed like silent torture. With each passing minute, I felt the weight of something wrong growing in my chest. The hospital walls seemed colder, the lights dimmer, the ambient noise muffled, as if the world outside didn't exist. I asked, I begged, I screamed at the staff. Please, someone tell me where my daughter is. But no one knew. No one knew. The answers were always the same. Mom, calm down. She's being seen. Mom, you need to wait in the reception area. Mom, don't worry, the doctor is with her. But it was a lie. I knew it was. The blank stares some of the nurses gave, the disdain others gave, the way they looked away when I approached. Something was going on, and no one wanted to tell me. I decided not to wait any longer. I walked down the hallways as if it were my own home, opening doors and shouting my daughter's name. People looked at me in fear, and some nurses tried to stop me, but I pushed them, knocked over chairs and tripped over stretchers. I had to find Alice. That's when I got to the exam room. There was an iron door with a dented sign on it, Imaging and Diagnosis. I pushed hard, and inside, there was only silence. Equipment turned off, the room dark, monitors blank. No sign of Alice, no sign of anyone. I went back to the hallway, panting, desperate. A security guard tried to stop me, holding my arm tightly. Mom, you need to calm down. You're going to end up disrupting the service. I broke free, pushed him away, and then screamed with all my strength. Where is my daughter? Other mothers and patients began to watch, some filming with their cell phones. It was as if everyone suddenly realized the absurdity. A woman approached me, her cell phone shaking in her hand, and whispered, Mom, I saw a child being taken to the isolation ward. There was a little girl with a pink blanket. Was that your daughter? My heart raced. Alice was wearing a pink blanket. I ran toward the isolation ward, screaming, asking for help. But when I got there, the door was closed, with a sign stuck on a piece of paper. Temporary interdiction, technical maintenance. I knocked, screamed, begged. A nurse came out, looked at me as if I were invisible, and said, Madam, this area is restricted. Go back to the reception. I couldn't believe it. My daughter was in there. I was sure of it. I went back to the reception, desperate, but something had changed. The entire hospital seemed to have entered a state of artificial calm. The lights had come back on, the phones were ringing normally, and no one seemed to notice the gravity of what was happening anymore. It was as if they were trying to cover it up, hide it, erase what they had done. It was as I sat, defeated, with my head in my hands, that I heard something coming from the side. 2 employees talking in low voices, thinking no one was listening. One of them whispered, Haven't they called the police yet? Another disappearance like that is going to cause problems. I immediately raised my head, the blood running cold in my veins. Another disappearance. I stood up, ran to them, demanded answers, but they remained silent, swallowing hard, looking away, as if I were invisible. One of them whispered, barely opening her mouth, If I were you, Mom, I would leave, before it's too late. What was going on inside that hospital? How many other children had gone missing? Why wasn't anyone doing anything? I knew I couldn't leave. Alice was in there, and I was going to fight until the last thread of my life to bring her back. My breath was short, as if the air had disappeared from the hospital. Each hallway seemed more suffocating, each second more cruel. I felt cold sweat running down my back as I moved like a cornered animal. The words of that employee echoed in my head. Another disappearance. It's going to be a problem. It wasn't just Alice. It wasn't just my daughter. There were more. I grabbed my phone and started recording everything. I filmed the empty hallway, the closed-off signs in the isolation ward, the locked doors, the lights flashing irregularly. I wanted a record. I needed proof. Because at that moment, I realized this wasn't a simple mistake. It wasn't carelessness. It was something bigger. I went back to the reception and tried to speak to the hospital director. I demanded, I shouted, I begged. But the answer was always the same. He is not available. You need to calm down. I refused to wait. I started asking other people, parents, companions, and that's when I heard more whispers. A middle-aged mother, sitting with her son on her lap, grabbed my arm and spoke very quietly. "This isn't the first time this has happened. 2 children have already gone missing this month. They say they were transferred, but no one has seen them since." My hands were shaking. I asked for more information, but she just shook her head and looked away, as if she was afraid of being overheard. It was at that moment that a security guard appeared again, walking quickly down the hallway. He was speaking into the radio, trying to keep his voice low, but I could hear, "D7's mother is still here. I repeat, D7's mother is still here. D7. They had a code for Alice, like she was an item, a number, not a child. I felt my stomach turn. Before I could think, a young doctor appeared, wearing a white coat and holding a clipboard. She had a name tag hanging around her neck, but I could barely read her name. She spoke quickly, almost rehearsed. "Mom, we managed to free up a spot for your daughter. She's in the observation room and has stabilized. Come with me." My head was spinning. Stabilized? What do you mean? Why didn't anyone tell me? I followed her, not knowing whether to trust her or not, but my instincts were screaming that something was wrong. The doctor walked quickly, not looking at me, as if she wanted me to just follow without asking questions. We reached a set of double doors. She typed a code on the keypad next to it, and the lock clicked open. We entered a small, cold room that smelled of strong cleaning products. Alice was lying on a gurney, connected to monitors, her eyes closed, her skin pale. I ran to her and held her hand, but she didn't react. The doctor stood in the doorway, watching. I asked, "What did they do to her? Why is she like this?" The doctor hesitated, looked around, and then said something that made my blood run cold. She had an adverse reaction to a medication protocol. "We are adjusting the dose. It is common in children." Medication protocol? Adjusting the dose? No one had told me anything about medications. No one had asked me for permission. I raised my tone. "Did you give my daughter medicine without my consent?" The doctor was silent. Her gaze was blank, trained, as if she had been instructed not to answer. And then she just turned and walked out of the room, leaving me alone with Alice. I knew something was very wrong. Alice was sedated, pale, and the heart monitor showed an irregular rhythm. It was as if her body was fighting something I couldn't see. I cried, rested my head on her chest, and promised, "I'm going to get you out of here, my love. I'm going to get you out." But how? How to face such a cold, inhuman system? How many children before Alice had disappeared without a trace? And why did they call her D7? I sat there next to Alice, the smell of the hospital on my skin, the smell of alcohol, the smell of chemicals, the smell of fear. My head was spinning. Adverse reaction. Medication protocol. D7. None of it made sense. How had my previously healthy daughter been turned into a number? Alice remained motionless, her breathing irregular, her eyes closed as if she had been turned off. Her hands were cold, and the monitor next to her was flashing numbers that I didn't understand, but I knew were wrong. I stared at the monitor and felt the panic rising. I got up and went to the hallway. The doctor who had attended to me had disappeared. A nursing technician passed by me, carrying a cart of medication. I asked for her, but he just answered, without stopping walking. "Dr. Fernanda?" She left for a meeting. "Mom, please go back to the room. You can't walk around here." I went back, but something kept pulling me to continue. The look in those people's eyes, the way they whispered. They were hiding something. I knew it. I felt it. I grabbed my phone and with shaking hands searched for the name Protocol D7 plus Hospital San Jorge. Almost nothing came up. Just an old, buried article from a small page of a local newspaper. Families report disappearances of children in hospitals in the region. No official responses. The article was vague, but it mentioned old cases, desperate mothers, investigations shelved for lack of evidence. One sentence gave me chills. The children were last seen being taken to restricted wards. None of them returned home. I closed my phone, my heart racing. I needed help. I called my husband, the police. but no one answered. The call would drop or be transferred to a recording. It was as if the entire hospital was cut off from the world. It was then that I heard a sound coming from the next room. Hurried footsteps, low voices. I approached without making a sound and heard a dialogue that made my blood run cold. This mother won't accept it. She should have signed the agreement already. The cycle will end tonight. Find a way. If she insists too much, we'll document it as an adverse reaction and end it. I leaned against the wall, my legs shaking, feeling like my body was going to collapse. Finish it. That word echoed in my head like a gunshot. They were going to do something to Alice. Something that wasn't supposed to be done. And no one was going to stop me. No one was going to tell me. No one was going to help me. I went back into the room, closed the door, and sat down next to her. I took out my phone and started recording. I recorded the monitor, the room, Alice's face, my face. I recorded my voice saying, "My name is Ana Paula. I am at the São Jorge Municipal Hospital. My daughter Alice was admitted with a fever and disappeared from my sight. When I found her again, she was sedated, without authorization, and they told me it is Protocol D7. I need help. If I disappear, if my daughter disappears, someone needs to see this. Please help us." My hands were shaking. I knew it was dangerous, but I also knew that if I didn't act, my daughter would be the next statistic. The clock on the wall read 11:45 p.m. The phrase whispered by the nurse wouldn't leave my head. The cycle will close tonight. I looked at Alice and promised, "I won't let them take you, my love. I swear. I won't. But how can we stop it? How can we fight against a system that is so dirty, so corrupt, so big?" I needed a plan. I needed to find a loophole. I just didn't know if there was still time. The feeling of being watched wouldn't leave me. Every step in the hallway made the floor creak beneath my feet. I knew that at any moment someone could come in and stop me, throw me out, pull me out of there. But the fear of losing Alice was greater. I stood up, took a deep breath, and decided to act. I left the room and walked slowly, trying not to attract attention. I passed the nurse's station and heard the muffled sound of conversations again. A nurse, in a dirty lab coat and with a cell phone in his hand, was talking quietly to someone on the phone. "Yes, we already have the child isolated. It is marked as D7. The cycle will be closed today. No, the mother is still here, but we will resolve this soon." I swallowed hard, my hands sweating. They talked about my daughter as if she were a number, an object, a task to be completed. And what did fix this mean? I needed to get Alice out of there. Now. I went back into the living room and carefully disconnected the monitor's wires. The machine began to beep, but I pressed the off button. I picked Alice up, feeling her weight. Too light, too soft. Cold sweat ran down my face. I knew that if I was caught, I wouldn't get a second chance. I left the room, holding Alice tightly to my chest. I walked quickly down the hallway, trying to look confident, like I was just a mother walking her daughter home. But with every step, my heart pounded faster. At the entrance to the ward, a nursing technician saw me. Her eyes widened. She took a step forward and asked in a low, tense voice, "Mom, where are you going with the child?" I froze. I felt my legs tremble, but without hesitation, I looked straight into her eyes and answered firmly, "My daughter will not stay here. I will take her to another hospital. She is not yours." For a second, silence filled the room. The technician stared at me, her eyes wide, as if she wanted to say something. But then she lowered her gaze, took a step to the side, and whispered, almost inaudibly, "Run." I ran. I ran down the hallway like the floor would disappear at any moment. I ran through the glass doors, through the lobby, and out to the parking lot. I ran like my life depended on it, because I knew it did. I got to the car, put Alice in the back seat, locked the doors, and started the engine with shaking hands. I screeched away, the sound of the hospital alarm echoing behind me. In the rearview mirror, I saw security guards running, nurses pointing, but no one could stop me. I drove like it was a nightmare, tears streaming down my face, my chest exploding with pain and fear. Alice moaned, weak, as if she were trying to come back to me, as if she were struggling to wake up. I called her, held her hand, begged her not to give up. But then, the phone vibrated on the car's dashboard. An unknown number. I answered, breathing heavily, and the voice on the other end, calm, cold, almost rehearsed, said, "You think you can just run away? This doesn't end here. Your daughter has a history, Mom. A history that doesn't belong to you." Before I could respond, the call dropped. I cried with rage. What did they mean by history? What else were they hiding? Looking at Alice, so small and vulnerable in the back seat, I knew I had to fight. It wasn't just about her. It was about all the children who had come through that hospital, about all the families who had never had answers. I couldn't keep quiet. I couldn't let it end like this. I drove aimlessly, with no destination, only knowing that I had to keep Alice away from that hospital. My heart was beating in my chest like a drum out of control. The words from that phone call echoed in my mind. Your daughter has a history. What did they mean by that? What history? My daughter was healthy, never had any serious health problems, never needed to be hospitalized. Unless... I pulled over to the side of the road, engine still running, and started rummaging through Alice's medical records, old appointments, and crumpled papers in the glove compartment. It was then that I found a small folded envelope with the hospital's stamp on it. A blood test I didn't remember authorizing. Date: 3 months ago. Location: São Jorge Municipal Hospital. I opened the scan and my stomach turned. There were handwritten notes on the back. Genetic profile, suitable for collection, D7. Alice's file had been marked. My daughter had been singled out as a number, as part of a process, without my consent, without my knowledge. And now I understood what the technician had meant. She has a history. They were tracking children based on tests. They knew exactly what they were doing. I called the hospital, the hotline, demanding answers, but I received only silence. Then a dry voice answered, "Madam, we have no record of your daughter in our system." "What do you mean, no record?" Alice had been admitted there that night. She was in the system. I screamed, cursed, begged, but the call dropped. When I tried to call again, the number was out of service. That's when my phone rang with an anonymous message. An unidentified number. The text was short and cold. "If you want answers, go to the Health Surveillance Headquarters. Archives Sector, Room B12. But be aware, touching this has a price." I knew it was a warning, but it was also my only chance. I started the car and drove to the address with Alice in the back seat, still weak, her eyes closed, her breathing irregular. I arrived at an old, almost abandoned building, hidden in the city center. I ran up the stairs looking for room B12. When I found it, the door was ajar, the lights were off, and there was a heavy feeling in the air. I went in, and what I saw took my breath away. Stacks of files, dusty folders, children's names, each one marked with a code: D3, D5, D7, D7. Alice's name was there, written on a yellowed sheet of paper. Beside it, a note: forwarded to experimental protocol, São Jorge unit, status, in progress. My entire body was shaking. I didn't know whether to cry, scream, or run. They were using the hospital as a front for something bigger, a clandestine experimental program where children were selected for procedures. I grabbed all the papers I could carry, filled my backpack, and ran out. But before I left, I found another file, from another mother. The name was different, but the story, the same. Healthy child, routine checkup, missing from the hospital, status, finalized. Alice was just one of many. When I stepped out onto the street, I felt a chill run down my spine. A black car was parked across the street. The windows were tinted. The engine was running. They were watching me. I knew it. They weren't going to give up. But neither do I. I looked at Alice, still asleep in the back seat, and promised, "They won't take you. I'll go all the way." Alice's file burned in my hands. Her name was there, printed, registered as if it were part of a stock. I was shaking. It was as if the whole world had suddenly become a battlefield, and I was the only one fighting to keep my daughter alive. I got back in the car and started the engine, my hands freezing, my heart pounding. The black car was still there, parked, like a silent threat. I swallowed hard, held my breath, and slowly drove off, watching in the rearview mirror. They didn't follow me right away. I drove on, aimlessly, until I came to an empty gas station with blinking fluorescent lights, and I stopped to take a breath. Alice was still in the back seat, her eyes half closed, her skin pale, but now she was beginning to mumble. Disjointed, low, almost soundless words. I leaned in to listen, and what she whispered was a simple, pure plea that tore me apart. "Mommy, please, take me home," I cried. I sobbed, my forehead pressed against the steering wheel as the world fell apart around me. But there was no time to despair. I knew they were after me. I knew Alice wasn't safe, anywhere. I turned on my cell phone and recorded another video. I filmed myself with my face swollen from crying, my voice cracking but firm. "My name is Ana Paula. My daughter, Alice, was taken from me at the São Jorge Municipal Hospital. They marked her as D7. She is just a child. They do this to other children too. If I disappear, if my daughter disappears, someone needs to know. This is not an isolated case. This is happening now. They choose healthy children, do tests without authorization, and they disappear. Please spread this. Please." I sent the video to every contact I could, posted it on social media, in mom groups, on local forums. It was all or nothing. I knew they could silence me, but not before I told the world what they were doing. Then the phone vibrated. A new message. No sender. Just a cold text. Like a punch in the stomach. "You have until midnight. After that, she's no longer yours." Midnight. Time was running out. I looked at the clock. 11:10 p.m. 45 minutes. I took a deep breath and thought, where were they now? Where did they keep the children before, doing whatever it is they do? And then a detail came to mind. Alice's file. There, in the bottom corner, was a nearly faded note. Storage, Basement 3 Technical Unit, restricted access. I knew where it was. It was the lowest floor of the hospital, the old wing, the one where the lights always flickered, where no one was allowed to go. I had been there before, when I was first looking for Alice, and the door had always been locked. I didn't think twice. I started the car, turned around, and drove back to Hospital São Jorge. I arrived and stopped a few blocks away, so as not to draw attention. I picked up Alice, still wrapped in the blanket, and ran to the service entrance. I knew I had to be quick, that I couldn't trust anyone. The lights outside were off, as if the hospital was on standby. But I knew that inside, the game continued. With my heart racing, I entered through the back door. The clock read 11:35 p.m., almost midnight. I had 25 minutes to save my daughter. I had 25 minutes to face the system, to defy everything and everyone, and to prove that a desperate mother can be more dangerous than any protocol. I moved like a shadow, my steps quick, light, barely breathing. The hospital was plunged into a heavy, artificial silence. The lights were low, the corridors empty. I reached the service entrance that led to the basement. The door was locked, but to my surprise, the electronic lock was flashing green. It was as if they had forgotten to lock it, or as if they were waiting for me. The clock on my cell phone said 11:40 p.m. I walked down the emergency stairs, each step creaking, the sound of my footsteps echoing like a warning that I shouldn't be there. The air grew colder, thicker, and the chemical smell was suffocating. When I reached Basement 3, I saw the crooked sign on the wall. Technical Unit, restricted access. I pressed my ear against the door. Silence. All I could hear was the distant sound of machines turning on, a constant, almost hypnotic hum. I took a deep breath, hugged Alice tightly to my chest, and pushed open the door. What I saw inside took my breath away. There was a large room, lit by hanging fluorescent lights, and in the center were rows of gurneys, each with a child lying on it, connected to wires and monitors. Some of their eyes were open, but staring blankly. Others were still, as if asleep. The sound of their heartbeats filled the room, mixed with the hum of the machines. And there, in the back of the room, I saw her, the doctor in the white coat, clipboard in hand, watching the screens intently. It was the same one who had pushed me away earlier, the same one who had tried to calm me down with empty phrases. She turned her head, saw me, and froze. I stepped forward, shouting, "What are you doing to these children? Where are their parents? Why is my daughter here?" She took a step back, but before she could say anything, 2 security guards appeared out of nowhere. One of them tried to grab me, but I screamed, desperate, struggling, holding Alice with all my strength. "You're not taking her. You're not." Alice woke up in my arms, scared, crying, her eyes refocusing. She was sobbing, breathing shallowly, trying to understand what was happening. I held her against my chest, protecting her like a lioness. That's when an alarm started ringing. The doctor looked at the security guards and shouted, "Protocol closure. Close the unit." I knew what this meant. I knew that if I didn't get out of here now, it would be too late. With the strength that only a desperate mother has, I ran. I bumped into stretchers, cables, machines. I heard screams behind me, but I ran. I ran with Alice in my arms, running for her, for myself, for the mothers who never saw their children again. I climbed the stairs, my breath burning, the sound of alarms echoing. I managed to get out through the service door, stumbling, almost falling, the early morning air hitting my face like a slap. Alice was crying, alive, breathing, in my arms. I put her in the car, locked the doors, and started the engine. The black car that had been following me was no longer there. I drove without thinking, without a destination, with only one certainty. I had my daughter back. But when I pulled up to the house, when I thought I was safe, I saw something on Alice's arm. A small mark, like a code, almost imperceptible. D7. Cancelled. And below an even thinner line. Reassessment in progress. I knew it wasn't over. I knew they could come back. But I also knew that now I was no longer the same. Now, I was ready to fight to the end. This is the true story of how my daughter disappeared from my hands inside a hospital and how I fought to get her back. I will not keep quiet. And you, who are watching, need to know. This can happen to anyone. Comment. Do you trust the health system? Share this video with other mothers. If you have ever been through something like this, tell your story in the comments. This video is a warning. This can happen to anyone. Be careful.